Welcome to Vetted. I'm Patrick. Have another great interview for you today. It's been a minute since we recorded it, but thought it was time to release it. It concerns MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. So, who did we have on? What is MUFON? I'm going to do a quick little intro about that before we jump into the interview. All right, so we are interviewing right here Jessica Tocco. Okay, so we're going to take a look at who she is and then what MUFON is. So first, let's see what MUFON is. MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network. It's a U.S.-based nonprofit organization composed of civilian volunteers who study reported UFO sightings. It is one of the oldest and largest organizations of its kind, claiming more than 4,000 members worldwide with chapters and representatives in more than 43 countries and all 50 states. The organization has been criticized for its focus on pseudoscience, and critics say its investigators fail to use the scientific method. The history. MUFON Inc. was originally established as the Midwest UFO Network on May 31st, 1969 in Quincy, Illinois by Alan R. Utkit, Walter H. Andrus Jr., John F. Schuessler, gosh, I hope I'm saying the right, and others. Most of MUFON's early members were associated with the Skylook newsletter of Stover, Missouri, and the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, the APRO, formerly of Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. MUFON was renamed the Mutual UFO Network in 1973 because of expansion to other states and countries. In July 2020, MUFON Executive Director Jan Harzan, who at a 2013 symposium claimed to have been visited as a child by a humming alien, was arrested in Newport Beach, California on charges of soliciting sex from a law enforcement detective posing as a 13-year-old girl. In response to the arrest, MUFON leadership reported that Harzan had been permanently removed as the organization's executive director, and Harzan will no longer serve any role in the organization. Now, why do I bring that up? Just telling the truth about some of this stuff of what happened, right? That's all it is. I'll put a link to this Wikipedia, and you can check it out, and MUFON has their own website. You can check that out as well. Just their current operation, okay? MUFON is currently headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, has chapters in every U.S. state, and claims to have over 4,000 members worldwide. Okay, it holds an annual international symposium and publishes the monthly MUFON UFO Journal. In 2015, MUFON founded Mutual UFO Network University, an unaccredited online institution which seeks to train members to investigate UFO sightings. That's right, anyone can join. The group claims more than 500 field investigators and specialized teams to investigate possible physical evidence of extraterrestrial craft. The network trains volunteers to interview witnesses, perform research, and draw conclusions from the evidence. Although investigators are not paid, they must pass both an exam based on a 265-page manual and a background check. MUFON features a newsroom and case management system on its website. So you'll be able to see all the different things about MUFON. They actually were most recently featured, well, at least one of their members was featured on the Netflix series Encounters, the Stephenville, Texas sighting episode, which was quite interesting. So we thought we would have somebody on from MUFON and talk about it. It's pretty part of the UFO lore, but not talked about entirely. So who are we having on? Jessica Tocco. All right, I'm going to show you who she is, and then we'll jump into this interview. All right, so let's read a little bit about her here. Jessica is the CEO and founder of A10 Associates. She's on the board of directors, y'all. Okay, so one of the top people. Jessica is the CEO and founder of A10 Associates and has over a decade of unique experience working with local, state, federal, and international governments. Jess runs the firm's overall operations and involves herself in all divisions. She additionally leads the firm's federal practice group. Before launching A10 Associates, Jess worked in the George W. Bush White House. She previously served as a director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam and director of the Asia Pacific Council of American Chambers, helping U.S. companies across 25 different Asian cities shape policies and coordinate lobbying efforts to promote American exports. Since moving back to Massachusetts, Jess maintains strong relationships with the Massachusetts Congressional Delegations. Jess is also active with both the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and the National Republican Congressional Committee. Jess now calls Massachusetts. Jess now calls Massachusetts home, where she maintains strong relationships in local politics. She has worked in the tolling and MAAS industry for almost 5 years. God, I cannot speak tonight, y'all. Sorry. Beginning her work with A2B, formerly Brisa Innovation, and now represents half a dozen clients throughout the industry. Oh my God. She also represents 25 clients nationwide for various work, including major Fortune 500 businesses like Parsons and Blink Charging. Jess received a bachelor's degree in economics and political science from DePaul University in Indiana. She holds an MBA from Holt International Business School and a financing modeling certificate from Indiana University's Kelley School of Business. So, you're going to learn a lot about Jessica in this interview. She's kind of like a PR person for MUFON, to be honest with you. That's kind of how I got the sense of it. But she's clearly a big part of MUFON, one of the top dogs. She also, as she'll mention in the interview and go deeper, she provided a lot of information to some hearings they had a couple years ago. Famously, UFO hearings, not the one that was this past July, but, a couple other ones that they had last year and the year before. So we get into that a little bit. We also just ask her some fan questions. And it's interesting. Let me know what you guys think. Was this worthwhile? Did you learn anything? Anyway, I've blabbed enough in this intro, so I hope you learned a lot about just what MUFON is. Again, I'll put links so you can check it out, their website, and who Jessica Tocco is, or Tocco. Not sure how to pronounce her name, actually, entirely. Just called her Jessica in the interview. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into this. All right, enjoy. I guess the first question I would ask is, what do you do for MUFON? Let's just start there.
Mm-hmm. So I am the lobbyist for MUFON, which means they've hired me to manage the process of educating the government about what they do.
Got it. Okay, interesting. So I saw that you have, I guess let's just jump in here. Like, you briefed some committee members about a hearing that we had last May. Is that right?
Yeah, and we just had another hearing this month on the Senate side.
Yeah.
So basically what MUFON wants to do is their mission is to study UFOs for the purpose of helping mankind. So one of the MUFON as an organization gets about 12,000 sightings per year. They have over 6,000 members, and their members are trained to look at the skies and report UFO sightings. But if you're not trained and you see something and you Google how to report a UFO, usually MUFON's database will come up. And MUFON started in the 1950s. So they're the oldest organization in the world. They're in all 50 states, but they're also in 48 countries. And they have sightings that go back to the 1950s. So literally hundreds of thousands of sightings. What they do with those is they aggregate the data in order to say, are we seeing more things at what different times of year? What are we seeing more of? Are we seeing a tic-tac? Are we seeing a flying saucer? But also they have a trained group of professionals that are actually trying to So the neat thing about MUFON is that 92% of what they see, they actually are able to prove is not a UFO. So, for example, someone will report something and MUFON will investigate, and they'll see it's a weather balloon. They'll see it's a kite. They'll see it's a drone. So where they can come back to someone in the population and say, we investigated that was this or that in the area at the same time, that can be very beneficial to clearing up UFO sightings. At the same time, though, it is common when they get a sighting that's real that they can't prove what it is, there will be multiple sightings in the area.
Okay, right on. Well, thank you for a little backstory there on MUFON. What was like the substance of what you briefed the committee members on?
Yeah, sure. So what we have been trying to do is get the members of Congress who are elected leaders to have more access to within the federal government related to UFOs. So the first thing that we did, starting about 5 years ago, was work with the government community to start using the term UAP. UAP is an unidentified aerial phenomena. So it doesn't have the stigma of UFOs. So we wanted to start getting people more comfortable talking about UFOs. The other thing that we did, but also a phenomena in general. So it doesn't have to be a flying object. It could be strange lights. It could be strange beings that are seen. They're all phenomenon that you can't identify. The next thing that we did is we wanted to try to find out if there were members of Congress who were interested. And we found that this is actually a very bipartisan issue. We have met literally with hundreds of members of Congress, and we've met with dozens of senators, both sides of the aisle. Some members have actually had sightings on their own.
Okay.
Many are interested in this topic, and they all share the belief that they're an elected official and the federal government is not sharing with them all the data they have on this issue. Now, it doesn't mean that all these members of Congress believe in aliens.
Sure.
What it means is that these phenomena don't have to be extraterrestrial. They could be Chinese, they could be Saudi, they could be Russian, but they're in our airspace. And they're looking at things you saw what happened with the balloons. So what we wanted to do in the beginning when we started a few years ago was just really get this issue to be talked about by Congress. Starting in 2021, we got with Senator Gillibrand, who's a Democrat from New York, and then Senator Rubio, Republican from Florida. And they put together what is called the Gillibrand Amendment. And it's an amendment in the National Defense Authorization that created a UAP task force that compels the Department of Defense to create a way for people to report UFOs, which is very similar to Project Blue Book 50 years ago. But also, the most important thing about that bill is that it allows service members to report UAP. For years and years, service members have been ridiculed if they report something. They've been in trouble. And service members should be able to report something. It doesn't mean that they think there's aliens. It could be something from Elon Musk. It could be, a private company's drone. But they need to be able to report for national security. So we started on the aspect of protecting our service members, national security. That bill passed in 2021. It compelled the DoD to create a UAP task force. The DoD didn't really do that, to be honest. They didn't appoint a head of the task force. They didn't start submitting quarterly reports as they were supposed to Congress. That made Congress mad because they said, we gave you a law to do it and we gave you money. So why are you not? So the hearing that happened last year, about, last April, was in the House side, the members of Congress, bipartisan. It was so cool. You had Congressman Andre Carson, who's very far left, having the same agreement with Congressman Gallagher, who's very far right from Texas, all saying, what's going on? Where's our reports? What's happening? What are these UFOs? So extremely bipartisan. And out of that, the DoD was supposed to produce quarterly reports to Congress. And they have to a degree, but they're heavily redacted and they're
Okay.
meaningless.
Yeah.
So then in 2022, we worked with members of Congress to pass another amendment that changed the UAP task force to the AARO. So the
Okay.
Office
Yeah.
of Aerial, the AARO, it's basically for all anomalies. And so now this office goes for anomalies in the air, anomalies in the water, because a lot of people, there are service members who've reported undersea objects. It also, now the DoD has appointed a Director Fitzpatrick, to run the ARO. And now we are expecting to see quarterly reports come through from this director.
That's Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Is that who that is
Yep.
from Arrow?
Yep.
Okay, right on. So like how much do you think of MUFON's contributions have helped like along the way? Because that's a lot of people to brief. That's a lot of information. Are you guys just giving them full access to y'all's database? Are you highlighting like certain cases to bring to them and just showing them data of how how much people are interested in this? I'm curious of sort of the nuts and bolts of what you guys are actually providing to them.
So because we have, we're a state-based organization, multi-state, what we've been able to do with members is show them what's happening in the state. So
Got
what's
it.
happening in their state, what's happening in their district.
Okay,
So that,
interesting.
and also how many members. So of our 6,000 members, which ones are in your state, which ones are in your district.
Yeah,
Um, and so we've tried to make it a local issue. And
sure.
I think that's allowed it to be bipartisan, but also people care, like,
Yeah.
oh, all right, I have 50 members in my state, and there were all these sightings in my district on this day. So that's how we've tried to like bring it home and take it kind of out of that Washington view.
Yeah, wow, that's actually very creative and very interesting, and yeah, it makes people care, right? When it's like this is in my backyard. Wow, that's good to know that not everyone's just getting the same sort of bucket
Mhm.
of information. That's great. I do have some questions at the end, so don't let me forget from Reddit. So I do want to ask you some fan questions about MUFON. So I don't want to forget. You've done a great job of answering a lot of my questions ahead of time. That's why I kind of just been letting you speak here. So great on this. Um, what has been y'all's involvement with Arrow? Are y'all involved in any way with any of the past, like ATIP or AllSat? Have you ever been involved in that sort of way?
Yeah, so we actually had a contract with ATIP, which is not in existence now, the
Sure.
program, where ATIP would give us, contract was through another entity, but basically what would happen is to us, we would get coordinates that the government wanted to know what was seen in a certain time, and we would send our report related to that coordinates. So they've not been giving us information, but we are giving them information. Um,
Okay.
in terms of ARO and the UAP task force, we've had multiple members of Congress recommend us that we should be part and be a civilian component of those entities. There's a lot of people in the industry running around saying, I'm part of it, I briefed it, I'm in, I'm out, they're telling me things. None of that's really true. As far as we know, they have not officially named a civilian task force. If they do, we would like to be on it. We're really
Sure.
proud members of Congress have nominated us. We have supplied them quarterly when we give a quarterly report to Congress and government officials. We're giving them our information. And we're here to brief them and support them whenever they need it.
Is just as a follow-up question to ATIP, that was with, I don't know how much you know about it, but that was with Bigelow, right? Or
Yes.
Bass. Was that connected with that? So did y'all work closely with them, or how closely connected are you guys with that organization?
As I believe our contract was with Bigelow, and Bigelow's contract was with ATIP.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Just trying to piece together. How hard is it really? Just on a side note here, right? To like, there's so many. As someone sort of newly getting involved in this, there's so many pieces and puzzle pieces, and so many groups and events and people connected to all this. How hard is it to keep it all straight up here? Right.
That's our
Right.
job.
Oh
That's
man.
what we do.
Yeah. Just on a personal note, have you ever had, well, you know what? Let me start here. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, like where do you sit with like, have we been visited, by ETs, as to just put it simply?
Well, I've never seen one and I have no proof. So I'll start with that. But I will say I've been doing a lot of research, and the most compelling research I've seen is not what people normally mention. And that is, I put together a presentation. Actually, I gave it to Senate intelligence staff and House intelligence staff on all of the major newspapers in the United States from the 1800s to the 1900s, when air flight was created, and all of the UFO reports that are in those papers. Because if you think about it, at that time, the predecessor to the New York Times, the predecessor to the Washington Post,
Yeah.
press was very credible. There's no reason to lie. There was no electronics. There was no air flight. There were no submarines. So if you dive into those papers, and they're across the country, they're in major cities, but there's a paper I read about a UFO that allegedly hit a train in Kentucky.
Wow.
There are a lot of, if you take in that 100-year period, um, before air flight, of course, sometimes there's gas and there's lights in the sky and there's crazy stuff. And I get that. But if you even dig back into the 1600s, when Massachusetts was being founded, which is where I live, a lot of the writings around the Salem witch trials, if you really read them, they saw lights in the sky, flying saucers. There was a ship that blew up off the coast of Massachusetts that had no dynamite in it. There was nothing electrical, lights coming from the water. So I think, to me, that's the most compelling evidence, because, and if you read newspapers written in the US, so after flight started in the early 1900s, then you went through the war, and you get to 1947 Roswell. Until Roswell, there was not a concerted effort on the part of the government to make UFOs sound taboo. So if you just read Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, any of those papers leading up to 1947, they openly say flying saucer. They openly say this, that, and the other. I'm sure 90% of it probably was either ours, especially the Cold War. But it makes you wonder, like, was some percentage of it real?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's quite interesting. Okay, I have two questions. One, is there a way to get a hold of, or can anybody see that presentation that
Yeah,
you
I
just?
can send it to you. And you can also Google around yourself, but I can send
Well,
it
of
to you.
course, of course.
Yeah.
But if that's great. So okay, I guess my second question would be, just a quick, so what's your number then on from 1 to 10? How confident are you that we've been visited? Because
I'd say a
that's
five. A
you're still
five.
in the middle. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm asking everybody this
Yeah.
specifically, and everyone's landing at the same number, um,
Yeah.
which is
I mean,
interesting.
there's a couple books you should read. There's a book called Area 51, and there's a book called The Days After Roswell.
Okay.
And if you read them, they're very good reads. But, the reason I have doubt, I'll tell you why I have doubt. If you look at Roswell, we had just come off World War I, the Great Depression, World War II. We had done testing on our own people. We were in the middle of trying to, we put Japanese in internment camps. We're in the middle of still trying to wipe out Native Americans. Very, very
Yeah.
bad government things going on. And then all of a sudden we have the Cold War happening. And, to a degree, I believe if it was the Russians in our airspace, that were crashing and they got through our airspace and it was them invading, there would have been mass panic. Had we admitted the Russians are going to the moon first, which they eventually went in space first, and they have better rockets than us, there would have been mass panic. And on the flip side, if you, I've spent a lot of time reading documentaries and watching Russian documentaries about extraterrestrials. They had multiple crash landings. Was that if they admitted to their people that that was our B-52s and our spy planes, would they have had mass panic? So it's almost less scary to say it's aliens or make you think maybe it's aliens. So those are the reasons that I have doubts, because some people believe that extraterrestrials were actually created in order to hide the Cold War. But
Sure.
some people believe the Cold War was created to hide our race to catch up to the extraterrestrials. So
Sure.
it depends.
Wow. No, that's very just honest of you. And I think at the end of the day, I like to hear that people sort of land there, to be honest with you, because I guess when the real evidence or whatever we want to say, like actually undeniable stuff comes out, that people are, I guess, more honest about it. Because otherwise we're just stuck. There's just so much information, so many sightings, so many videos. It's hard to know for just the average person, like what to actually look at and what, where to stand. Because you can want to believe, but another thing is the truth of, what's happening. Wow, that's interesting. What do you think of Annie Jacobson?
Oh, she's great. I read she's a really good author. I love her stuff. I've never met her, but I love her books.
Yeah, I mean, I just heard some interesting theories about her on the Joe Rogan episode about a lot of this of what you're saying. So whatever, I'll dive into that more in the final edited version, that people can check out that book of hers. Yeah, that's interesting for sure. So you said yourself you've never had a sighting or an experience or anything.
No, but the other thing that always makes me wonder is I represent a lot of private companies. My firm does technology, transportation, infrastructure.
Yeah.
In the economy, in the world, if you're a private business, you're selling what is going to make your business money. You have to do that for your shareholders. That's the way it works. So you really never know. Most people say that the technology that's on the is 5 to 10 years behind what the company actually has. Because if the company can't commercialize it yet, they're not going to sell it.
Sure.
So, a lot of people, when people don't believe in UFOs, they say, well, there's no pictures, there's no videos. Well, that's not true. There's pictures and videos everywhere. But
Yeah.
you and I don't know what these companies may have
Correct.
that hasn't been commercialized yet.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if there's ever, I don't know if that reality would ever exist, right? Where just the
They
average,
can't.
right? I can't exactly. That sort of becomes the issue, right? I think one other side sort of parallel to this, and then I do want to get to these questions from Reddit because I do not want to forget this, is sort of like, if a lot of people are distrustful of the government and that they've been hiding things and this, that, the other, and now the government is poised with providing us information and being transparent on these findings, like, does that distrust just fade away? And you're like, yeah, now I trust everything they're saying. How do people find that balance? How do
Well,
people come to terms with that? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I think it'll be impossible to ever know because, and listen, the government does have a lot of UFO people are anti-government. I'm
Sure.
not. The
No, me
government
neither.
does. Yeah, I mean, they have to protect us, right?
Of course.
So at some point, they have to make a decision. And if they think we can't handle certain information, or they need to make up it's UFOs because they have great technology they don't want the Chinese to know about, I'm okay with that. I think
Yeah.
what the government is doing, if you really step back and look at the last 30 years, the government is giving us small doses that there could be something out there. And if you read, there's a lot of documentaries. Star Trek was created with Disney, was created with NASA to get people starting to think about what's happening outside of the Earth. Disney filmed multiple shows that were on national news about how
Interesting.
the space flight would take place and how that would mean. So the government and media has slowly dosed us. Now you saw a few years ago videos starting to get released. Now suddenly you've got certain individuals post government like Lou Alessandro coming out and saying this, that, and the other. So now they're having hearings. For a long time, before it was branded UAP, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, they wouldn't even talk about the topic. Now, almost every week, someone's calling me, and one of the major news stations is discussing things. The government's actually showing videos. So I think if there is an effort to disclose, that there's an effort to do it in a way to earn trust back, which is like these small doses.
Oh, that's interesting for sure.
But also to avoid mass panic, right?
Yeah. That's also another question. I'm going to move on to these Reddit things, but if it, what would it cause? I mean, it is kind of crazy to think about, for sure. Okay, so if you're ready, I'm just going to ask you some Reddit questions because I do not want to forget this here. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, Allison asked here, what is the process by which MUFON assigns people to investigate UFO reports? Do the investigators include people with expertise in astronomy, meteorology, rocketry, satellites, aircraft, or photography?
Yes. So there's a difference between a member and an investigator. A member is somebody like me. I love the topic. I get all the emails. I can do the database. For something to be categorized as investigated, it has to go through, we have 646 investigators. They have to go through a training course, which we give yearly at our symposium. The book's about 3 inches thick of what they have to do. They have to have some previous training or something that makes them relevant to be qualified to be a trainer. And there's a rigorous process that they have to go through and then the way that they get assigned to a case is based on geography. So we have chapters, we have members in each state, and then we have investigators that are part of that chapter. So when we know they can go investigate not only a photograph that's taken, we have a lab, we have a photographic lab, we have a metallurgy lab. So believe it or not, people will try to tell us all the time, here's a remnant of an alien spacecraft. We can test and say, no, that's just made of aluminum, like whatever. So we have a full metallurgy lab in St. Louis. So we go and we actually test things. And for example, just a good story about that, we had a photograph that came in where someone was a pilot in a little plane and they thought they saw a UFO. We sent it to our investigators. They took the photo, they Googled, they saw what kind of a plane it was, and they said, oh, those 3 lights in that configuration are in that cockpit. That's a reflection. So they're trained to understand.
Sure. Yeah, great example. Okay. Well, I won't read that guy's Reddit name. This guy asked, does MUFON investigate crop circles?
To my knowledge, we have not. Not that I'm aware of, but we would. If someone called and wanted us to come out, we would.
Okay. Almost done here. Can Jessica elaborate on if there are any cults involved with MUFON? Okay. Stan Romanek was in a secret society called the Cult of Ramtha within the organization. I'm sure there's some OGs in MUFON that know. I don't know. That seems odd question, but
I don't know about that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, hey, listen. All right. Is MUFON active on Reddit or other social media? The results of its investigations would find a good audience here.
We are active on social media. And we also on our website.
Okay, great. It says, but after so many years, what has MUFON discovered concretely, if anything, about, a crash or a sighting or experience, or I don't know, the best piece of evidence, I guess, maybe? What's the...
I would say the best evidence we have are the thousands and thousands of photos. And if you aggregate them over the number of years, and you can really see commonalities, you can
But
see,
not just like one single,
no.
the smoking gun, if you will.
But
It's
I've seen, yeah, and
everything
I've
together.
honestly, I've seen dozens of very compelling pictures.
Are they public or are they just within? Have you seen anything that's like not public that would, sort of changed your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen, but
Wow.
yeah, I think they have really good information. And remember, they don't have to follow HIPAA, right? They're not medical, but they do protect reports. So a lot of times when people submit things and people go in the database and they upload information, MUFON wants to protect them. Sometimes when
Sure.
people see a sighting, we also have licensed therapists that work with us. We don't provide any medical treatment, but it's very traumatic. Sometimes when people see a sighting, it's very scary. I've met people who've had a sighting. They believe it. They believe it 100%. So that is also something that, is very compelling as well. But we try to protect people's pictures and their stories, unless they're comfortable with sharing it because of the stigmatism that they have, faced for the last 50 years.
Wow. No, that's crazy. There's a lot of people. I interviewed James Fox one time too, and he said that he had seen things that he can't really talk about publicly that would convince. And it's always, and nothing against that, but it's always like, as someone from the outside, right? It's like, oh, it's all these conversations you can't talk about, or things that people can't, sort of release. And everyone from the outside is just like, oh well, when can we see that stuff? And I get it. Wow, what a tough position to be in.
If you do look at our website, we do post our top 10 sightings and photographs that people are fine with releasing, and I think they're pretty compelling.
Anything that I didn't bring up about MUFON that you want to just let people know, or dispel any myths before we go here, that people have misconceptions about MUFON that you can sort of clear up, that are the most popular? I don't know.
No, I think this has been a great interview, and thank you. And we're always happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Jessica. I hope you have a good rest of the day and are able to warm up. And thank you again for everything you do for the community, and look forward to getting this out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Bye.